on everything you guys should not do when it comes to your startup, your IT, and sourcing stuff, etc. And for 9 of those years since, I've had people call me up going, damn, I wish I had listened to you when you presented in the first place. I made every mistake in your presentation. They called me a year or two afterwards saying they ran into all of these issues. So hopefully it's meta enough for you guys to take some of what I'm saying here to heart, because it will affect you if there's any technology in your startups. So I'll go through this at a good clip, but what's my timing overall? How long have I got for this before I do Q&A?
As long as you need.
Okay, I'll move reasonably quick. So business, there's a yin and a yang to it. Generally, entrepreneurs who start businesses are often right brain dominant or emotional, and good salespeople, and good people, and good at rallying people together, and so on. Because the left brain dominant, more logical people are too risk averse to ever take a chance on being an entrepreneur. However, so it's necessary to be emotional and crazy to do this. On the flip side, that's your offense. If you forget about the defense side of it, the other left brain side of the business, all the money you make, you will lose. As I said to a room full of entrepreneurs, I presented this recently at the Mastermind 100, which is people who have $100 million or more, educating people who are on the way to making that. And I said, right now, if I say I'll flip a coin and you can give up all the net worth and everything you've earned so far if you lose, or I'll double it if you win. Nobody would take that bet, because losing what you've already made is worse. Losing $1 million you have is worse than the benefit you get from the next $1 million you get. Law of diminishing returns. So if you think about it, you spend 80–90% of your time trying to make the next sale, trying to grow the business, and you forget to spend any time trying to stop losing the money, getting sued, forgetting about contracts, legal, taxes, quality assurance, etc. You're risking your greater asset, which is to not go backwards from where you're at. And no champion team, from a sports analogy, has ever won with no defense. So I took 30 years of stuff and squashed it into a very small number of slides here, so this will be a little bit like drinking from a fire hose, but you guys get a copy of this. There's 9 types of risks to think about on any project or endeavor you're getting into. So any planning you can do on paper ahead of time has 100-to-1 savings over not planning it out on paper and trying to change it after you're in prototyping mode. In other words, changing things at the requirements and specification level versus changing it after it's been rapidly prototyped is 100-to-1 savings. That's been measured by a whole bunch of different groups, including IEEE. I'm going to run through these risks really quick just so you understand what they are. But on any project you do, if you stop and ask yourself, just spend 5 minutes on each one of these, you'll come up with a bunch of risks that later on will be true if you don't manage them. The project risk, you have the money, the resources, the people, the stakeholders, whoever your advisors and investors are. You have everyone's buy-in to be able, and enough money to market it. The amount of people who come to me saying, I got a great idea for an app, and it only costs 10 grand. The Indian guys promised they'd do it for me. And I'm like, great. And when it's done and no one's heard of it, where's the budget for differentiating if you get 8 million apps in the store? So the marketing budget, important. Next one, communication risk. What you want to know, when you want to know it, how are you going to communicate, are you going to sign off on your requirements? Are people going to formally notify each other when things get to a certain stage? Defining and thinking about that protocol, very critical, especially if you have more than one person in the company. Functional risk. This is what people usually think of when they think of testing a product. Does it do what it's supposed to do? Can I log in? Can I print my report? Can I do my searches? What they forget about is non-functional risk. That's all the things you assumed. You assumed the password would work. You assumed it would be cyber secure. You assumed that it was backed up and that the backup was restorable. You assumed that if you sold well and 1,000 people log on Monday morning, that the system will respond in less than a second. You just assumed all of that. Those are requirements too. If you don't tell the developer those, they'll say, you never told me. Because common sense doesn't exist. This one is the ugly stepchild that everyone assumes developers do in their spare time. And it will screw you up over 30% of your resources if you don't do it. It's called deployment, rollback, or configuration management risk, sometimes referred to as DevOps. This is the FedEx of software. Did I get the right version? with the right tool, on the right box, in the right environment, behind the right firewall, with the right IP address, at the right time, on the right night. And usually you screw up one of those things and your beautiful new system didn't get there, it doesn't work, and embarrasses you in front of your new customers and your investors. So the logistics of making sure you can deploy it being the right versions of stuff, and roll it back in 5 minutes if it's wrong, so at least you can go back to the last one you knew worked, is not something to be ignored. That alone is almost a full-time job. Because if that goes down, it means the developers can't work, the QA people can't work, the documenters can't work, because they're all sitting around going, the system's down. Privacy and security risk, one bad cyber breach, and you better start renaming your company, because nobody will invest or trust you after that. And that can happen randomly. It can be not your fault. It can be ransomware getting into your system. It can be you just not following best practices. It doesn't mean you have an enemy out there who's focused on hacking you. It just means you were unfortunate and in the wrong place at the wrong time. So get up to speed on the best practices there. BCDR is business continuity and disaster recovery. If there's an earthquake, if there's a chemical spill, if there's a power cut, if everyone can't come to the building for 3 weeks because of a contamination spill that happened outside. Can everyone reach each other? Have you got each other's cell phones? Do you have access to your VPN? Can everyone work from home? Can they work through their laptops? Is there anything in the office you physically need to get to in order to operate and work? That's business continuity, continuing the business or recovering after a disaster. That exercise should be done at least every 3 months, where you pick a day, you say, hey, this Friday, nobody come to work, but everyone work, and see how productive they are. Do they all have each other's latest cell phone numbers, etc. Let's say the internet line here gets cut. I'm assuming you're working here, but if you work, so there's no internet to this building for the next 3 weeks. Can you get to your stuff? Do you have your stuff off site? Can you get your stuff off site? How do you get to it if there's no power? So any one of these things, you might be like, earthquake, never going to happen. But if you take all the possible things that go wrong, one of them will happen every 3 years. Single point of failure risk. SPOF, or SPOF hunting as we do it. Going through your company and figuring out, hey, is there one password to one thing that if we forget it, can't get in? Do I have that one CTO guy since college that's built everything, knows where everything's buried and documented nothing? And you wake up one morning and find out he just got crashed his motorcycle on the way to work and is unconscious. Happens all the time. And then you're like, shit, I don't know anything about my own system. I can't get into my own company at all. That's where we get called to hack back in. That's not easy either. And then documentation, training, legal, and compliance. Really boring, horrible stuff for anyone who's right-brained and emotional. Absolutely necessary if you need to be HIPAA compliant, for health records, PCI compliant, because you're taking people's credit cards, or there's all kinds of other requirements to be compliant with depending on what industry you're in. Regulatory compliance, if you have anything to do with cannabis, your regulatory compliance on that is being defined and audited in California currently actively. So every risk you will have is in one of those list of 9. And if you think about it, talk about it, and manage them, it will help you.
This is going.
Here's my next pet peeve. When folks talk about their system, or their app, or their project, or their game, they talk about it like it's one thing, like a slice of bread. This is my app. This is what I'm building, this is what I'm running, this is what I'm selling. No, you're not. Let's talk through this, and then I'll show you what you're actually doing. How the customer explained it, how the project leader understood it, how the analyst designed it, how the programmer wrote it, how the business consultant described it, how the document was how the project was documented, what was installed, how the customer was billed,
I love
what,
that part.
how
That
it was
was
supported, and what they actually needed in the first place. Now you wouldn't be laughing so hard if you hadn't been around the block for about a couple of decades.
Every one of those.
Every one of those.
Every one of those.
Thank you.
Just hold that up for one more second.
Every single one of those, including the business consultant described it as
Absolutely.
recently as last month.
That's great.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah.
This is what you're actually managing. Is a bakery that's producing multiple loaves of bread with multiple slices within it.
Oh.
Now, if you think you're not, let's take one of these slices as your app today. That's your prototype app you've been showing people. Are you done with it? No, there's a bunch of guys working on the next version for 2 weeks from now, right? Okay, so that's the next slice. But you also have a new version of Android coming out 6 months from now. They're starting to prep the interface for that, because otherwise you won't be able to work on half the phones. So that's the next slice. So you got multiple versions of that going on. Then your app is going to have multiple features, APIs, integrations, things it plugs into. So each release are these green things here. That's your system is a red. It's going to have multiple releases that are happening maybe every month or every 2 weeks. Those releases are going to have groups of defects in them and enhancements. Things that are going to be in the next release that you're hoping to fix. And you're on this merry-go-round, and this is what you're actually managing. The difficulty comes when you're talking to developers and you're not technical yourself. And you think you're working on an app that's a slice of bread, and they think they work in a bakery. And both of you can't understand why you can't talk to each other. Some tips and tricks about managing that. One simple way is use one of the Kanban type software systems that allows you to take any task, any bug, any defect, treat everything as a ticket, like a tech support ticket where you call Apple. Put the tickets here and then start prioritizing them high, medium, low. You'll also realize you never get to medium or low. You always have too many highs. Then you move them over here if someone's actually assigned to working on them. Then you move them over here, not when they said it was done, when someone else said it was done. Because developer is the worst possible person to test their own stuff and say it's done. They're kind of biased. So when someone says this is done, don't take their word for it. You need someone else to validate. And then they validate it and say, yes, now it's done. The word done is very tricky in development. Issue tracking. So an issue is one of these tickets. So take a bug in your system that you found. It's a new bug and someone opened it. Someone has to assign it to someone and decide the priority of it. Now it's open and in progress. That person, it might be open, it's assigned to Walter. Walter's not working on it yet. Walter's fixing the last ones. It's in progress. Now it's being worked on. I think it's fixed. When the QA person verified it, they said, nope. I reopened it and sent it back again going, nope, it didn't quite work the way we wanted. Finally it gets verified, then it gets closed. Everything goes through that cycle, and a collection of those are then assigned to each release that's going out. So until everything pointed at the next release is all verified and closed, then that release shouldn't go out. So that is these blue things down here. Your systems will help you manage all of this, but you can think of it this way, at least you'll be on the same page with your developers. $1 change requirements helps you to, saves you $100 change to code. And if you just Google that, you'll see a whole bunch of research around it, but take my word for it, it'll lower your total cost of ownership by 100 times by trying to do the upfront planning and upfront requirements work as much as you possibly can. Writing code is the last thing you should do, not the first thing you should do. The other thing is, as you start developing a system, you'll come up with new ideas, things you don't like, things you want to change, things you want to tweak. The more you change your specs, the lower your quality goes. So if you can get all that out of the way at the beginning, where the system is 90% defined, and you're not going to keep changing your mind, and if you do, any new ideas you have for version 2, don't try and squeeze into version 1, you give yourself half a chance at actually getting it delivered. If you keep the rate of change constant, your quality will keep improving. Otherwise, you just keep sabotaging it. Because you fix this, you break that, you fix this, nothing ever catches up. Now, if I asked you to invest in a startup, and I said, in this startup, this one person is the president, the CEO, the COO, his own lawyer, the VP of sales, the marketer, the brander, and the business plan writer. Do you think that's a wise investment? Okay. What if he really had a big head?
Poor guy.
All right, still no. You have single point of failure. You got the jack of all trades is a master of none. You got someone who's unrealistic. It's all kinds of red flags. It is equally ridiculous to say, I got an IT guy. Which I hear all the time. Don't worry, I'm a developing company, I got an app, I got an IT guy. There's no such thing as an IT guy. Because he'd have to be a CTO, an architect, a project manager, a business systems analyst, a developer, a database architect, a database admin for your security, a tester testing his own stuff, a config manager to be able to install it and move it around, and a tools guy who knows where all the tools are buried that you need to use. That is just as ridiculous as that, but people do it all the time. That's the single point of failure. Those are bad. So what do you do when you don't have $1 million to hire 10 different people? First thing you do is start recognizing those roles. So understanding what they do, and if you don't know, Google it enough and read the half-a-page description of what those people do. Look at job descriptions on Monster. See what these people really do, what their responsibilities really are. And you should write roles and responsibilities for anyone who works for you. Otherwise, how do you know that they know that your expectations of what they're supposed to do are the same? Now, what I did here is I took all of these roles and I tried to collapse them as much as possible, because a role isn't a person. One person can do multiple roles. So each line is a person. So here we got 4 people. One person can reasonably do these things part-time. One person can do these things. And you're better off having 2 people part-time than one person full-time who can, again, get hit by a bus. Now, everyone with a star on them needs to be backed up. Oh, sorry, no redundancy. Everyone without a star has to be backed up. So they are in this. So my database architect here, which is one of my developers, my CTO is also a part-time database architect. So some of these people, if you lose them, you just got to go hire a new person and get them up to speed. Some of these people, if you lose them, you might as well close the company, because it'll cost you more to understand what they've written than to hire someone new. And some code is kind of like writing poetry. You usually don't have 5 different poets writing it at the same time, nor can you replace a poet halfway through and expect the second half to look the same. Some things are commodities, some things are not. So what I've done there is broken it out, going, you need 4 people, 3 of them can be part-time if you like. Sorry, what's that, 5 people, I'm counting it wrong. 3 of them can be part-time if you like, but you need to separate those roles out a little bit. Shared services or outsourcing or offshoring. The good news is they will do exactly what you tell them. Bad news, they will do exactly what you tell them. If you don't know what you're doing, you don't have defined requirements, and you're not quite sure what you're telling them, you're going to get in a lot of trouble. And you're going to get really frustrated because you keep going, don't you guys have any common sense? Don't you know, obviously I need logins to work, and I need this, and I need that. They're like, no, we're not paid for our discretion. We're not paid to fight with you or push back. We're paid by the hour. And we know by sitting here smiling and not telling you all the things you're leaving out, you have to pay us 400% more than we estimated you at the beginning. Because we know you're fucking up. So you're a rich American, you can keep paying us forever. Now, outsourcing in general, there's lots of graphs on this. People look at it and go, wow, you know, $100 an hour for a guy here, $16 an hour offshore. I'm saving, 84%. Nope. Because that guy offshore in a different time zone, not speaking English perfectly, not being able to call them or demo them or use them in sales demos and things when you need them to be, not owning or controlling the IP of what they create. Your US patent is useless trying to enforce it in any country outside the US. Even if you did it all correctly, if you're Microsoft and you outsource perfectly, the best their reports have shown is 15 to 30% savings when they do it correctly. Because all the other crap you have to deal with being offshore erodes quickly that money you're saving. Also, all programmers are not equal. I don't work for $16 an hour because I'm good at what I do. So the guy who does, you got to ask yourself, how good is that guy? So there's lots of graphs on when that inflection point happens, but I'd say don't offshore everything till you've got 30 plus people in the company and you're growing. I don't know if you'd agree with that number or
That's exactly right.
got a lot happening. Now, just reality check. And I pulled these statistics last night just to update them. Weirdly, they hadn't gotten a whole lot better in the last 10 years. 66% of IT projects are 100% over budget. More than half a chance you're going to spend twice as much as you think. Not 20% more, 100% over. 100% of your budget is going to cost you that to get 90% complete. and another 100% of your budget to get the other 9% complete. And you're never going to get the 100% complete.
Which is
It'll
funny,
always
because you
be
look at,
close.
those are the standard deviations. When you think about it, 66,
Yeah.
9, and that follows that, but that's exactly
Absolutely.
standard deviation right there. Sure, makes sense.
68% of IT projects fail.
Wow.
Now, those are IT projects in companies that do IT projects all the time. They're not startup companies doing it for the first time with someone who doesn't know IT managing someone who does IT. 1 in 10,000 apps are financially successful.
1 in 10,000.
Is that data? I wonder if that includes the apps. I mean, that might be, that data might be dated. That 1 in 10,000.
I mean, I pulled it last night from a Gartner
wow.
report.
Geez,
Yeah.
okay. Wow, that's terrible.
It's like
That's terrible.
Wow. Yeah.
So,
means you gotta be good.
So happy about it.
Wow.
yeah, so it doesn't mean nobody should do apps, but you gotta know what you're up against.
Wow.
You can't be going along going, hey, I have a 50-50 shot if I wing it. No, you don't. You're 1 in 10,000, you do it well. Okay? So if you do have to hire folks who are developing, offshore particularly, try to get 3 reference checks unsolicited. Take all the there's lots of formulas and statistics online that folks have come up with for decades in the military to try and estimate, based on the complexity of a piece of software, how long it'll take to develop. And then what they do at the end of that really complex formula that's really exacting is they multiply it by 2. Because for some reason it's always like that. So it'll big long formula, multiply by 2. Agile, if you don't know what it is, learn it. It's the best way to produce software now. What you want to avoid like the plague is a thing called waterfall, which is an older fashioned way of doing software. And if the people you're talking to don't know what agile and agile sprints are, or what a scrum is, or a stand-up, run away. Develop a service level agreement if you're hiring these people ongoing, which has your coding standards, your naming conventions, what kind of documentation you require, what level of support, what level of uptime you want the system to have. Define that stuff, or it won't be there. Define done. To a developer, done is I hit the button and it popped up on screen. I can go home now. Your version of done is the customer's wire cleared in my bank account and they're using the system and nobody's calling me at midnight and I can sleep. 2 different definitions of done. Now, you may not be a technical person yourself, but defining UAT, which is user acceptance testing, is something you can do. That means in your head you've envisioned your system, and you sit down right now and pretend it's in front of you or on your phone. If I just said, poof, here's your system, what's the first 20 minutes of stuff you're going to do? I want to log in, I want to create a new user, I want to search for something, I want to put it in my shopping cart, I want to connect to PayPal and pay. Whatever that is, whatever you think it should do, you write all that down. Those are your user acceptance tests. You are the first user. You will accept this and pay for it if it passes these tests. If it can't do any of that stuff, you don't want to pay for it. They'll tell you it's your fault because you can tell them you wanted that stuff because it was all in your head. So write down as detailed as you possibly can what all your user acceptance tests are, and then give it to the developer saying, it needs to be able to do this before you give it to me. The idea most people have around developing new products and apps is that they want to sell out one day or be bought out. Well, start with the end in mind. Your valuation, someone who's going to invest, who's smart, will hire someone like my firm to come in and do due diligence on you and talk to your developers. And we're going to know code, so we're going to look at the code.
13 million lines of code to do it.
We have tools that look at that.
What does that mean?
We're going to log into your GitHub and see how often that code was checked in. We find that the main person who wrote half of it doesn't work there anymore, and the rest of it was ripped off the internet somewhere. Even though you don't know that because you just outsourced all this stuff to those IT guys. You don't know what they did. And then we see there's no comments or structure anywhere, so we can't scale, and it's basically spaghetti. So now your valuation just went from 10 million down to 500K because it cost 9 million to fix it. 2-stage lawyers. Lawyers are expensive, good ones. So what I recommend is you use 2. You find a lawyer for about $100 an hour who knocks out the majority of issues with your contract, puts it together, tells you what it's called, removes the typos, cleans it up. And then you give it to a really good lawyer for an hour to put in a couple of killer phrases that were missing. That way you just save yourself 10 hours at $1,000 an hour by the good way.
Yeah, that's 400 is low,
I
by the
love
way.
that.
Well, 400, it's 1,000 an hour, that 400,
Yeah.
you want the partner, you want the guy with his name on the plate.
Tips and tricks. Dry reading it, what that means is do it all on paper. You could lay out your app right now on this table with enough Post-it notes and little drawings going, okay, if I click, here it is, here's our home screen, it's got 5 buttons on it. If I click this button, it goes to this Post-it note. That Post-it note goes to this Post-it note. Now, what if the customer changes their address? What if their zip code doesn't work? What if their recurring billing doesn't happen? Oh shoot, I forgot that, let's put that over here. Where's the help button? Where do I put live chat? Where's my 1-800 number? Let's start copying someone else's website that's kind of like in the business I'm in. Where's my privacy policy? Do it all on paper, lay it all out that way first, till you can run your whole website and app on that piece of paper and navigate it back and forth and there's nothing missing. That becomes your spec. Now, here's a PowerPoint, a pretty picture. Make it kind of like that.
I've seen it, yeah, it's awful. It's good fun.
Never mind.
I didn't make up any of this
No,
stuff.
I know, it's painful to listen to.
Virtualize everything. One more person comes to me going, is the cloud safe? I'm like, well, your closet isn't. Amazon spends $1 billion per data center. They're across multiple continents. They have armed guards and man traps with bio vendors allowing people to go in to change a hard drive to destroy it to FBI standards. Unless you're doing that in your basement, yes, the cloud is more safe. And the 80 million businesses that are in there, just put yours in there. Cloud everything. You're not in the paperweight business, which is what we used to call all the old hardware that you have to throw away every 2 years if you start buying your own equipment. Really escrow. Whoever you hire, no matter how good a college friend they were, if you don't know tech, and they do, they ultimately can hold you to ransom. There's only 2 general outcomes for your business. It's either worth nothing, so nobody's going to bother fighting about it, and he's eventually going to leave because he has to pay the rent. Or you catch on to something and it takes off, people start putting serious money in, and now there's millions of dollars of valuation on the table. Suddenly he's not your friend anymore. Suddenly he's like, give me 50% of the company or your code disappears. That happens all the time.
Wow.
You get help, and what are you going to do? You don't know the code, you don't know where it is, you didn't have the password. Investors, you just signed contracts of liability to your investors. This disappears, you look negligent because you were negligent. So escrow used to be, I'll take all the code, put it on a thumb drive, and put it in my safe. That is useless because you don't know what to do with that code. The tools necessary to edit it, move it, install it are missing. The instructions for how to set it up are not there. So live escrow is you take another company that has nothing to do with the first company, you pay them for 4 hours a month to say, I want you to take all my source code, pull it out, compile and reproduce production, make a second website that looks exactly the same as the first one, and then shut it down after you run your tests on it. And then do that for 4 hours every month. Because now, you know that if someone does hold you to ransom for your code, all you have to do is switch over to that other company and go, last month you were able to reproduce my whole company from a copy of the source code, so I know I'm good. I know you understand it and I know I have it. Unless you reproduce production, you don't know you have everything. And a clever developer, even if he says he's doing all this, will leave out that little piece so he has a little leverage.
What's that cost?
With us, you can do this for about $800 a month.
I was gonna say, it can't be much, it's a back.
That's not the complexity of your system, yeah.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean,
How-
you have to set it up
yeah,
once.
why would I do it? That's fucking brilliant, I never thought of that, that's an incredible.
That's the only way you know.
Yeah, of course, and it's cheap as
What's the actual name for that process?
Live escrow.
Live escrow?
Yeah.
Wow.
80-20-year contractors. So if you are hiring contractors, buying equipment in anything, even if you're doing hemp furniture and you have multiple suppliers of the hemp, find your best, cheapest supplier, give them 80% of the work. Find your second best supplier, give them 20% of the work. Let them know about each other. Because when your best suppliers start screwing you over, not delivering on time, adapting their pricing structure, you can say, oh, it's okay, I have another one already set up, already plugged in, already delivering. I'm just going to order 60% more from him next month. And keep them in a price war with each other. If you're locked in, again, on tough deadlines, and you're like, oh shit, I can't go and look for a new hemp supplier now, it'll take me months. Get a good architect. Now, if an architect is building this building, their job is to think about the foundation they need, the structure, what's going to happen to the land, flooding from the water, what fire codes you need, the elevator system, the plumbing system, the electric system has to be included and accounted for. And then he makes it pretty and puts some window dressing on it. Your software architect does the same thing. Are you in the right language? Are you on the right platform? Have you got the right setup? Is the systems you're using free now, but as soon as you have more than 10 users, you're going to start charging you $1,000 a month per 10 users. And you don't find that out if you get a big bill in the mail. Their job is to future-proof you so you're never painted into a corner. And to make sure he has the source code as much as possible. So when you say, hey, I need to move this window over here and make it pink, and he goes, I can't because we bought that from someone else. I don't have the source code. Then you start getting all kinds of restrictions that you can't do. More tips and tricks. We have a thing called a 360 risk assessment, where we go through your whole company, IT department, financial department, no matter how small you are, you have to think of these as departments of functionality that you do. A right-brainer will go, I'm doing marketing and branding and I have a thing. And they'll ignore everything else. And it will bite you in the ass eventually. You need to do each thing enough to treat it like a real business. And a real business has all these things function. You need to look at each thing and go, is that a risk to me today, or is that under control or not? If you neglect these, you're hurting your business. Governance is not government. It's the rules about how do you make decisions, how do you make rules, how do you decide things. And if you have multiple founders or co-founders, look up a video called Slicing the Pie. Brilliant video a Harvard professor put together about fairness.
It's a book as well.
His book as well?
Yeah, and an audiobook is now about it.
But he basically laid out, if you have multiple partners in a firm, you might all start at third. Nothing is ever that fair in life. One of you is going to bring in the biggest investor. One of you is going to make the biggest sale. One person is going to be the one who worked the 40 to 60 hours a week that it took to do it. So it'll never be exactly a third. So two of you are going to feel like you're on a free ride, and someone's going to feel like you're getting screwed over. So slicing the pie solves that problem. We talked about issue tracking earlier. Product development life cycle, and in software it's called software development life cycle, SDLC. And CMM levels, capability maturity model. These are things that billions have been spent on to figure out the right process for developing products and for running a business predictably. Learn about those two things enough to be aware of how to apply them to your business.
Can you just explain that again, product life
Sure.
cycle maturity?
So a software development life cycle or a product development life cycle would be from cradle to grave of my product. From what do I do first? Do I do the market research? Do I figure out if it's feasible? Do I figure out what it costs? Am I speccing it out first, or am I writing my requirements first? Or am I writing my UAT first? What order am I writing things in? Then it goes into developing it. Well, are they developing the final one or just rapid prototyping for a while? And then if I'm doing agile, I'm developing it in 2-week iterations. Then my quality assurance for it being done. Then my staging area before it goes to production. Now it's in production. I need to monitor it and alert it. How do I know it didn't go down, it didn't get hacked, it didn't stop working? I don't want to find out 5 days later where I'm like, why do we have no customers and no money? Oh, the password server went down 5 days ago and nobody could log in. And now they won't come back, ever. So, software development life cycle is your factory for your product from the beginning of the life cycle all the way to the end, and how to cycle through it. It's designing that bakery I spoke about. The capability maturity model, if you look up CMM, well, CMM will show it to you, but there's 5 levels to it. Level 1 is complete chaos. Every day you come in, your pants is on fire, and you're just putting out issues everywhere. Somewhere in the middle, you've kind of standardized how things are done a little bit, and you have some measurements in place. And at the top of it is continuous improvement. I'm now just sitting here tweaking, how can I make things better? At Amazon, Bezos has said 70% of his time in his meetings with executives is talking about their 2-year out strategy and plans. They're not dealing with shit that went wrong this morning or last night. They're planning 2 years ahead because everything else is on autopilot. So they're at CMM level 5. Good judgment comes from experience. Experience comes from bad judgment. Any sufficiently advanced piece of technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Yeah.
Most people driving a Prius would agree. Walking on water and developing software from a spec are easy if they're both frozen. You keep changing them, they're not.
That's a good one.
Now,
I don't know, who's Edward Broad? I don't know that.
who?
Edward Broad, I've never heard, that's fantastic. Wow.
Now, why would I hire a lawyer? Because law is complicated. It has its own language. You need a special education to understand it. Everything you do involves some kind of contract, and if you sign the wrong one, you're screwed. That's why we have lawyers, right? Why do you have a CTO, which is like your IT lawyer? Because it's complicated. It has its own language. It needs a special education to understand it, make sure he has a computer science degree. Everything you do involves a contract, and you sign the wrong one, you're screwed. Just like law is its whole own universe and language, so is IT. Don't underestimate it. And that thing I just said about making sure they have a degree in what they're doing sounds like the most obvious thing in the world. I'd say 8 out of 10, now to be fair, the companies that call us are in trouble. The ones that are failing don't bother calling us because we're like the fire brigade, we're the 911 for IT. So it's a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy, but when they call us, and I say, send me the resume of your CTO. Or I say to the CEO, what's the qualifications of your CTO? He's like, I don't know. You're the CEO and you hired him, you don't know? So we look it up. He, studied philanthropy or anthropology or something. And the rest of it he learned in his underpants at home. It's like, well, okay, this guy has 0 formal training in any area of tech, and you're surprised you're in trouble. General wisdom, be thoughtful with everything. Your planning, your people, your finances. The more you can think ahead, carefully. And what's his name? Henry Ford said, thinking is the hardest work there is, which is why so few people engage in it. Don't regress. So first thing, don't go backwards. Hold on to stuff you have, make sure it's backed up, make sure it's secure, make sure you can't be held to ransom, that you can't lose what you've got. Then focus on your sources of wisdom. You guys are here for wisdom, to learn from the mentors, and to try and get epiphanies, and try and, if you take 5 things from my presentation, you would have saved yourselves 5 disasters that could have killed your business. And then worry about securing your future. How can I go and now I'm not going to go backwards, and I'm not going to be stupid, working smarter, not harder. Now let's grow. Everyone jumps straight to here and forgets about these 2. Whatever life you want to live for yourself, your kids, your loved ones, taking care of your parents, etc. In California, will probably cost you reasonably more than $220,000, $240,000 a year. By the time you buy a house, have a car paid off, pay off your mortgage, take a vacation, nothing extravagant. The richest 1% of America, that's what they take home. People think they're all billionaires. Nope. They make about $500K a year, and in California you gotta pay half that in taxes. So if they're not putting the kids through college, that's what they take home. So what does that tell me? 99% of people are wrong 99% of the time on every piece of advice they give you. Your mom, your roommate, everyone. You want to take care of yourself? Put $5 million in the bank, free and clear. At 10%, well, not in the bank, but in the mutual fund. At 10%, you got $500K a year for the rest of your life, regardless of inflation or growth. Then do whatever the hell you want after that. But before then, don't take advice from people who haven't done that yet. Everyone's full of advice for free who haven't done it. Where do they live? Where do they drive? Have a look at what, have they done anything? Validate your sources before you take their advice. Be uncomfortable. It means you're learning. I'm not telling you guys stuff you want to hear today. I'm also not trying to scare you. I'm just telling you this is what reality is. And if you're uncomfortable, it means you're learning something. So don't avoid being uncomfortable. Over communicate. Set expectations with your people, with your staff, with your investors. Tell them everything. Be genuine, be open, be authentic. Make friends slowly, keep them a long time, hire quickly, and hire slowly and fire quickly. Don't be fooled by randomness. It's a great book if you haven't read it. If your first app did well and your first 1,000 customers happened after one conference you did, And you're like, wow, I'm a genius, this works, this is all validated. Maybe it was just random. And the next 5 conferences get you nothing. So don't be fooled by your own randomness and your own press releases. And be selfish until you can be significant.
What does that mean? Yes.
What it means is Mother Teresa hugged 100,000 people. They died of malnutrition later because she had nothing to give them. Bill Gates was a selfish prick till he was 50. I say that because I knew him. And then he wiped out malaria for 14 million people by paying for their medicine. So if you measure or quantify goodness, even in just lives saved, I'm not saying Mother Teresa was a bad person, I'm saying you should redefine what a saint is. So be selfish and ruthless about your business and your growth and your mission until you've put the mask on yourself first in the aircraft, and then you can help everybody else out, starting with your own family.
I like that.
Because your parents are going to cost $7 to $9 grand a month when they're in a home, in a wheelchair, needing help. Marketing, online and offline. I didn't put this here to read it to you. You'll get it in the slides. That is everything you got to manage if you're out there. Be in the podcast, be on the billboards, do the social media, the Twitter, the Instagram, everything. And if you don't know what Harrow is, learn it because it'll get you free earned media. But there's a lot to manage. And if you're either a personality or your product is a personality, you're going to have to focus on getting into all these things.
Did you say free learned or free earned?
Free earned. So earned press means something you're doing is so cool, somebody wrote an article about you,
Yeah, yeah.
as opposed to bought press, which means you paid for the advertisement.
Okay, so how could it
Earned
be,
media.
so how could it be free if you earned it?
Well, you earned it. They're doing it for free. You didn't
Okay,
pay
yeah,
for it.
yeah, okay. You
Yeah.
earned it, so
It's
they'll
not
do it for
advertising, you
Yeah.
pay for
free.
advertising.
Okay, okay. Yeah.
What you did was
Something
noteworthy.
That's funny.
That's it. That's a quick run of all the tips I gave you. Pull out this thumb drive.
No, I brought yours.
Oh, that's the wrong one. Sorry.
Yeah, that's yours. So you can just stay up there for the questions.
Sure.
I'll start with one because I thought of one, I'm gonna forget it before I.
I want to hear feedback on my pitch.
It was good.
Well, the pitch was exactly as you said. I wish I'd known some of that shit 5 years ago. I would have said, I should have done that. That would have solved me a problem. I'm supposed to be smart, and I looked at that and went, oh, duh, that would have made life easier. You mentioned one data point where you said you could, you would say, you have $1 million, you're worth $10 million. And I'm gonna toss a coin, and if I, heads, I'll give you another 10, and tails, you lose the 10, right? And of course, nobody would say because of the learning curve. I would like to imagine an experiment where you said, I'll give you a flip a coin, it's 50 odds. If it's heads, you lose the 10 million. If it's tails, I'll give you 100 million. At what point in that slope would people say, ha, what is that learning curve worth to me? Because that would be an interesting, I would.
And it'll be different depending on the person. The more emotional, crazy gamblers will
Right,
go
yeah.
for it right away.
But it's-
They'll get 20 million.
The Dan Ariely and me would go, I'd like to see what that, and how that data would play out, because then who would say, I'll
And the
take
more
it.
risk averse people will go, I don't need anything, I have 10 million, I'm good.
What would yours be?
Mine?
A 10x, a 5x, or none? What would?
I would be actually extremely risk averse, but I also know my own abilities. I hit $1 billion at 31, multi-billionaire at 34, hit my first million at 16.
Wow.
And I've grown over 15% a year since. I did 4 billion last year, 11,000 people now. And I did all of that without taking a risk. And the thing that bugs me sometimes when people get up to speak and they're like, yeah, I joined gangs and I took drugs and I went to jail and now I've recouped and come out of it and run a startup. I'm like, yeah, I just behaved myself the whole time and worked hard. I don't have the sob story other than I started with nothing.
You should watch the film Booksmart when you get a chance. I think you get a big kick
I'll
out
make
of
a note of that.
it. It's actually very funny, it speaks to that.
But yeah, I mean, I work consistently, I work thoughtfully, I practice all of this, I'm risk averse,
Yep.
and I still grow at a good, took my pocket money when I was 10 years old till now, it kind of went like this. It wasn't like this. I don't like roller coasters.
I don't know exactly how I'm going to say the phrasing the right way, but the question's about building teams, and you're somebody who is an expert, you're an artist, you're very capable, probably in many cases the most capable in the room. How do you still build a team and an enterprise that's not dependent on you and you being the single point of failure? Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally. My company is extreme in a lot of ways. We only hire people with IQs over 150. So those go into a thing called a consortium. So those are geniuses that barely speak human. And they're on the far left end of the spectrum. But if you're writing a nuclear control system or air traffic control at LAX, you want those people because they make a mistake in about 1 in 10,000. Whereas normal human error is 3%. And if 3% of the planes crash coming into LAX, it'll be really bad. Now, yeah, to counter that, in order to be a business and survive, we hire people with EQ scores over 75, high emotional intelligence. They babysit the geniuses and the customers. They're called super nannies. So we have the super nannies and the geniuses working together, otherwise it would be a dysfunctional think tank. Then I had to create a culture, the manifesto, where they don't kill each other and they learn how to respect each other, that they're useless alone. With me, they can make $500,000 a year. Without me, they can't keep a job at McDonald's because they're not considered team players. So I created X-Men, a home for the mentally enabled. Orphanage for smart people because they had nowhere else to go. And I made a safe place where they could just think and be themselves and not make mistakes much, and be appreciated for being pessimists. But they were kicked out of everywhere else in corporate America. So I harvest IQ from the planet and lease it out to those in need as a precious commodity. That's who we are and what we do. Now, that's an extreme and unique way of building a team. If I was to start doing a new startup, my ability to build a team would be, I wouldn't give equity away for a while. I'd have a long probation period before I start vesting shares to anyone. I wouldn't have partners in the company. It rarely works out. If I believed in partnerships, I'd be married by now. Next thing is, with those people, one question I ask anyone I'm hiring is, what have you done for fun? What's your hobbies? Especially in tech. So if someone's a gamer, for example, they should have tons of their sketchbooks full of stuff they've done, their bedroom wall covered in it. They've been at every anime expo. They're true fanatics. Someone else goes, what do you mean? I just answered the multiple choice questions at Fullerton State College and got my gaming degree because I didn't want to be a doctor that my dad wanted me to be. You'll immediately find out who cares and who doesn't, who's going to stay up all night and who doesn't. Having someone who cannot verbalize their thought process means they're incapable of brainstorming. So someone who's brilliant but keeps it all to themselves and doesn't say a word is useless. You need them to have enough confidence to be wrong, to fail, to blurt stuff out, to argue back, to debate things, and enough integrity to stand up and fight for when they believe in something. So we took 35 interns in per year to follow me around the company. Whichever ones can prove me wrong or catch me out on anything get turned permanent immediately. Because otherwise, how do I know they're useful? People agreeing and kissing my ass all year are absolutely worth zero to me. But anyone who can stop me stepping on a landmine, I'll hire that guy right away. Not just because he's smart and he saw something, but he had the balls to say it. That's important. So IQ, EQ, integrity, work ethic, and being fanatical about what they do.
And building that culture of trust that allows people to be wrong. Would you say that's a big part of it too?
Yeah, it's all how you react to it. Someone's wrong in my company, the first thing I do is thank you for telling me.
Yeah.
Now, what do you think is the best way to stop it happening twice? There's no yelling or chastising or punishing them. Intelligent people are sensitive. Those are the only two responses you should give. Was it the Good to Great book? Talked about the good and bad CEOs as the window and the mirror. The CEO's in his office, he has a mirror over here, he has a window over there. You get this the right way around. A bad CEO, when something good happens, goes to the mirror and goes, that was all me. Something bad happens, he goes to the window and goes, oh my God, those idiots. I heard. And a good CEO does the opposite. Goes to the mirror and goes, what can I do different? How have I screwed this up? Something good happens, he goes, it's all my people. That's the difference between good and great. for business.
Yeah, I think it was Ted Kennedy or someone said, it's amazing what you can get done in Washington if you let other people get the credit. You know, because people then feel engaged in the solution, and that's whether or not.
Not today.
Yeah, I was
Right.
thinking exactly
Not today.
But that's what Ted Kennedy said a while ago.
You talk a lot about IQ, and you kind of just briefly stopped on it, EQ versus IQ. I mean, you obviously are very IQ heavy on that side, and certainly with who you hire, you only hire people with a certain par. How do you take the EQ into it then?
So I fake my EQ. My Myers-Briggs test is blank on the right-hand side. I have no feelings. Don't even like you guys. It's an EQ joke. So I simulate EQ because you can, when you have an abundance of IQ, simulate in real time like an actor. You can learn what people want to hear, how often they want to see a joke on screen, etc. Unfortunately, people with EQ can't fake IQ. But the most successful people in the world are not the ones with the highest IQ. Malcolm Gladwell's Outliers said they had about 120 IQ, so they were smart enough. After that, they were well-rounded. Bill Gates was a brilliant strategist. He never developed a system in his life. He bought DOS from someone else. Steve Jobs wasn't the tech genius behind Apple. Wozniak was. Steve Jobs was brilliant at being absolutely driven to develop a vision of stuff that didn't exist, and he didn't care if it wasn't possible or not. He just kept yelling until somebody did it. Wasn't a nice man, but effective. Emotions will kill your life, your business, and your bank account. And ironically, following emotions 51% of the time in your decisions, or as I call it, being an oxytocin drug addict, will actually put you in a very sad place. You're all going to live to about 100, 110 years old with medical technology. 4% inflation per year in a country that's no longer superpowered. It's 47% unemployed due to AI. What's your battle plan for that? Especially if you have kids and you brought them into this. Lay that out on a spreadsheet and do the math. It'll cost you $2.6 million per year to live a life that costs you 80 grand a year now to live.
What?
4% compounded.
That's wild.
You used to be able to buy a BMW for $700.
My brain just
Brand new.
exploded.
Right?
So, plotting that out by not following your feelings and being ruthless and logical about it, and being selfish, you'll get to actually a happy place where you can turn around and help the people that are worth helping.
Very different question. What advice would you have if we're not building software? If our companies are using and plugging together various pieces of cloud-based software as a service stuff, CRM systems, accounting systems. I mean, of
Exactly.
course, we all need technology,
Yeah.
but if we're not, building apps
Or you're not building the apps, but you're plugging them all together
Right.
and reselling them as an app,
no, just to run our business.
or just run your own business. But what is the business?
In my case, it's social emotional development for middle school youth, education.
All right, you're in the software business. If I start a restaurant down here, you start one next to it, you're a brilliant Italian cook, and I buy everything frozen foods from Costco, heat it up. But I manage my Yelp rating, my reputation management, my Instagram tagging, my influencers driving in traffic, etc. I'll
Yeah.
put you out of business because you're in the software business, no matter what you're doing. Now I agree, you're not developing an app.
Yeah.
I get that part, but don't think you're not in the software business.
No, I get that. I mean, technology is an absolutely critical enabler of any business.
So, I mean, I'd have to go back through this, but I mean, I'd say still 50% plus applies. Because you got to hire someone, you got to have a contract with them, you got to set expectations, you got to have a life cycle for what happens when a customer comes in and all the touch points they have, and how they go through your sales funnel, and what your data analytics are, and how you manage them. And those systems that you're using and the data in them has to be backed up and restorable and have disaster recovery. So that's why I asked, what's the business? Because I can't think of one that doesn't need most of this. Yeah, you don't have a developer, maybe? That's it. The rest applies.
Great.
I have another question. There's two parts. One, the first one is, so I see machine learning, deepfakes with the voice, stuff like that. I actually see that as part of the business plan for teaching in the future. Do you have any thoughts or something that on machine learning, artificial intelligence actually in education?
Yeah. All of high school can be completed in under 18 months and get higher SAT scores than they do now by accelerating the moment of cognition. People like to learn in different ways.
Yes.
Matching how they like to learn with master teachers who teach in the manner that that teach in a way that matches the way the kids like to learn is way more important than worrying about the size of the class. Using VR and allowing people to actually do what you're talking about rather than hear it, according to the Education Institute, is gives of all the stack of how much retention people get from learning. I have this on my laptop. Actually, we finished a 145-page report on the future of education this morning.
Well, is that going to be
so-
public?
No,
Or is that
unfortunately no. It's for a
client?
private institution. But the graph I can find because we pulled it from National Education Institute. So in terms of retention and learning, VR is second only to actually teaching it yourself.
Okay.
Understanding and using data analytics after you remove contamination, because every class is going to have someone who's not taking it seriously, someone who has arcadis, rich kid syndrome, someone else paid for them to be there, someone who's just dumb. Not much you can do about that. Take those outliers out of it and focus on the middle section, and really do analytics on how they're doing, how fast they're learning, how quickly they're comprehending, and creating more extreme circumstances to make them get what's going on, coming up with really extreme examples. Almost like the therapy work they use VR to reduce PTSD. There's a lot of good research in psychological effects of, working on the brain and rewiring it using VR to overcome PTSD. If you can overcome that, you can also overcome blockages in learning.
Was the VR, was it VR, AR, MR, or was there a comparison between them?
It was just VR,
Just VR.
but we're working on XR. Extended reality,
Yes,
includes all of
yeah,
them.
yeah, okay.
Sorry, 2 questions? So people's hands up? Yeah?
I was wondering if at any point you had identified anyone that scored adequately on the IQ and the EQ test. And then regardless of that, would that even be beneficial in the system that you've set up?
It wouldn't necessarily benefit us. We found a couple, they're on our board.
Mm-hmm.
Very rare, 160 IQ plus an 85 EQ, naturally. It's very rare. At that point, I can't afford them. That guy had made
I got you.
130 million by 31. So he didn't need to work for me, that's why he's on my board.
Makes sense.
Because they have everything now. They do whatever the hell they want. It's a superpower.
I gotcha.
But also, when I did my Myers-Briggs test, if any of you look at their website, you'll see the Infinity magazine did a whole cover article on me, and they published my results in there.
Yeah, right.
And
What is your
With your permission.
What are you? Your type?
well, everything is 0 on the right side,
Really good.
completely. But it's ENTJ technically, but the E and the I is 0 because I don't care
I'm the
about people.
same. Yeah.
Yeah.
And no sensing. I was completely intuitive.
But
Wow.
I asked them, well, what's the goal here? Am I supposed to be balanced in the middle? And they said, no, if you're balanced, you're not a leader.
Yeah.
You don't believe strongly enough in anything to lead anyone anywhere. So you need to recognize your weakness on whichever side is missing and compensate for it. Don't be blind to it. But it doesn't mean you need to be in the middle where you're neutral on everything.
Do you?
There was a
Oh.
section in your presentation that touched on product life cycle maturity, referring to this as a bakery and factory for the product. Could you expand on that just a little bit more? Because I think that's where I am, and so I need to understand it just a bit more. or a lot
Sure.
more.
What's your product, quickly?
So I initially created a sustainability app based on Pagovian externalities. So when I created it, we used 8 externalities that I and my professor, my CSO, created, and we developed all of these kind of scoring methods for sustainability, and included AR, virtual reality, and kind of what you're saying, experiencing this as a human, and then you're going to be able to understand sustainability a little bit more, a reward system, incentivizing. By the time I got through my 3rd slide, 3 minutes was out. So I tried to consolidate this massive product and then went down to a sustainable verification system where I patented an idea to add a green code to the end of a SKU, and then that would sell to a manufacturer, kick through, and the patent that I have is very specific. It goes from point of sale directly to your social media feed. That's what somebody cannot copy. Then I couldn't get through that either in 3 minutes. So finally I turned to like a bunch of my friends and really smart people who said, what the, and then they said, we had then just created, I just pitched it, a firm. So now I have companies that are saying, we want all these products, and because it takes me so long to go through, because one person might say, I just want to do externalities on air quality. One person might say, we want social and ethical externalities. And so I have to do all the numbers on it. It's too long to explain in this course, so I just created a firm. And so now this firm, you know, Dawn's saying it's too open, it's too like whatever. So I agree. It's just that nobody's going to listen to 8 externalities based on Pagovian taxation. Like, nobody cares. But they do. I just have to find that right person. So back to my product question about what's the factory for the product? Like, what does that mean?
Okay. There's a few issues there that need to be addressed, but we'll start with your question. So your factory is the life cycle of your product and how you update it. So when you want to add a new feature, a new plugin, or one of these new applications of it, what is the life cycle for that? What exactly happens, rather than I do it all myself? What are the stages of what you do so that it doesn't depend on you? You don't become the single point of failure in your firm. How do you test it? How do you develop it? How do you decide, is it worth it or not? Is it even feasible before you start building it? What order do you do these things in? And then, how often is it updated or validated? How do you know if you broke it? How do you know if it stopped working 6 months from now because some of the data is wrong or something went wrong with it? How would you know? And if you have a life cycle, part of it being we're going to validate and test against a frozen set of data that I always get the same reports, the same results, that's part of your life cycle maturity. So think of it if I'm working at Tesla, like I come up with an idea for a Cybertruck. Now I got to go to the sketching department to design it. Then I got to go do the math and go, yep, half of America buy SUVs, so it's financially feasible. Now, what's the next stage? Is it road legal? Can you get the Department of Transportation to approve it? So all the kind of factory stages you have to go through before you can start selling Cybertrucks. So that's the factory I'm talking about. And even if it's a piece of software, it's still going through stages in the factory. And the capability maturity model of CMM is simply how do you monitor that factory, how do you measure it, how do you know it's going through well, how do you know the quality's good, what are your KPIs? Because you can't improve what you don't measure. So how are you measuring that consistently? And then doing a post-mortem at the end of every project going, okay, what did we learn here that I can improve? And the way I improve it is by going back and tweaking the procedures in my factory so that I never miss this step again. I never forget that it was all hard-coded in English and I should have done multiple languages, or I didn't do multiple currencies, or I forgot to plug it into PayPal, or whatever I forgot to do. But you're right, the other hard lesson for anyone, especially anyone technically minded, is being technically correct doesn't matter. So you've seen the diets that were based on blood types, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot less complicated than your math, but they sold a lot more copies of it because it was simple. Right or wrong, people like simple.
There's a learning opportunity here too, because Walter asked you a question. So what was your product? Right?
It's called Eco-Eye.
But, and you explained a lot about these externalities. A product has one very specific definition. A person reaches into his or her pocket, takes $1 out of that pocket, and gives it to someone else for something. Every product shares that common characteristic. I'm buying this thing. I'm going to exchange my valuable asset for that. Be prepared to define it better. The product, my product is the Tesla. I'm going to create an electric car. Maybe the product has to have a definition, a defining characteristic that you can pretty much say quickly, so that people know what it is that we're talking about. So that's concentrate on that right away. What is the product? The product that you pitched today was a consultancy, right? Someone reaches into his pocket. Everybody think about this. They're going to reach into their pocket and give you $1 for something. What is it? How many times do you do that? I mean, everything goes back to that basic hydrogen atom. right? They all share that character, they all have, you know, that's it. Then they can become, then the atomic shape can be more elaborate. But they all have those characteristics as a neutron, proton, they exist in that particular shape. And if you can't do that, do it. Make that's your assignment. Figure out what is the product, what is somebody paying me for, and how often and how well can I do it.
Can I just ask one question and just mention one thing? Because when I was doing all the research for this, like there are a couple things I based it on. Of course, I based it on, you know, differential equations, and then climate classification and Dewey Decimal System. There was a combination of things that I used when I said I access this information for this app. And so, essentially, what they're paying me $1 for is an app.
Okay.
Is that it?
It's an app that does something.
That does something.
Then that would be the product. So Walter asked me, what is your product? I have created an app that does this.
Well,
And,
no, what she has though, she has several different apps that do different things.
okay.
But it's all under the umbrella, so she needs a generalized.
But it's a suite of software tools that has. I'm not going to answer the
We
question.
need to be a house of brands, not a branded house. Procter and Gamble, most people on the street don't know what they do. Everyone knows every single brand they have. They know individually. They don't know it's from Procter and Gamble. But they know that their toilet roll and their dishwasher and everything they use in their house is actually in the tiny labeling owned by Procter and Gamble. You need to be Procter and Gamble. It doesn't matter that all the apps came from you. You can act like different companies, but start with one being successful first. Pick one baby first. The other thing is, have you heard of Pink's hot dogs? Has he ever described the process of what's in a hot dog? What do you think that is?
We just know it.
Nobody cares.
You don't want to
It's
know.
cute.
You don't want to know.
No, that's what I mean.
He doesn't even show the hot dog. He shows it on a bun in a stand with a line of people.
And the line is part of the deal at Pink's. I mean, that's the party. You know, that's the thing. Yeah. Well, you mentioned two things before about education. I don't know about your report, which is due or pending, but there was a great quote that I'm going to share with you because we used it 10 years ago and it held up. George Bernard Shaw said, entertainment is the best thing to happen to education since torture. Which is just such a great quote because it really
What?
entertainment is the best thing to happen to education since torture. Which,
Okay, but
depending on
what
your pitch,
year
is a
was
great,
this?
it's a great, because it's Shaw, and you can go with a shading quote. But my question is, or actually to everybody, because in your question about educating the new technology, there's research in China now, and I just saw this on some public, or 60 Minutes or something, but they're doing a lot of research on facial recognition, specifically emotional recognition. In other words, they're now creating these satellite programs in China where you have a classroom of students sitting in a room, 20, 30 kids, and I know this from my experience because my daughter was educated considerably a lot online when she was younger. And one of the problems we had was that if you had 10 or 15 kids in the class, if I'm teaching you guys here, I can see that I'm getting that feedback in. You're not going to say, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm going to see that, I'm going to sense that, and I'm going to teach to that or basically acknowledge that. That's missing in a lot of online education. So what they're doing now is they're actually creating
I just
recognition.
assumed everyone looked like that all the time when I talk to them.
But you acknowledge it. You actually can factor that into the presentation. What's happening in these virtual teacher environments? So they have a classroom rather in the farthest district of China, northern China, 20, 30 kids sitting in front of the class, and the software is saying she's not getting it. He's confused. He has a problem with this, and it's intuitive in the sense of being programmed in. But that's extremely helpful and useful because now.
Can you shoot me a link on that?
I'll have to find it, but I thought you might find it useful because it is extremely pivotal in the pedagogical because how do you not know this? My daughter she was in the Stanford Online High School program, and that would happen where there'd be 4 or 5 kids, and I'm watching, I'm observing this, and she's getting it, and I'm saying, but I know of this 10 names in a slot here, the teacher is only looking at one at a time. She's not seeing the full classroom, and these kids are getting lost. They were getting steamrolled in a lot of ways, and this would address that. I thought it was a kind of a fascinating.
I think less than 5% of people complete MOOCs, which is I think what you're talking about, multiple online, I don't know, massive online.
Yeah.
What does it stand for exactly? Something courses.
Yeah, right here. College course, but
Yeah, it's incredibly low. It might be like 2%.
Wow.
But the odds of the efficiency is still very high, because of course, there's no, the
Right.
scale factor, okay, if you get 2% efficiency, fine.
Yeah.
It didn't cost us any more to do 100
Yeah.
or 2.
And MIT always finds this like genius in Mongolia who actually
Okay.
followed the course and did amazing and is truly a genius. They happen to just be born in Mongolia and then they get a free ride to go to MIT or something.
Okay, we have another question over here.
Oh, mine?
Yes.
Oh,
Yeah.
Good.
Sorry, it's really brief, but you didn't talk much about like the structure of Scorpion itself, what actually the company does. It doesn't seem like it's a product company, right? You guys don't release any product.
We do have products, but it's
You
not
do?
a product company. I didn't talk about it specifically because I wasn't here to sell Scorpion, but I can give you the rundown.
Right. It's my own interest.
A third of it is military apps, so
Wow.
Agile Command and Control System for Navy, Aegis ballistic missile defense, nuclear subs. April 4th last year, the U.S. Army press office announced we're the ones who put the AI in a Predator drone, unmanned vehicles. And so we've stopped 26 terrorist attacks, including the Boston bombing so far, using that technology. Another 30% of the company is Fortune 1000, so SoCal Edison, Kaiser Permanente, Bank of America, City National, all the big companies here that want to avoid risk, balance the smart grid, make sure stuff never gets hacked, never goes down, never goes wrong. So we have AI technology to do that, and that's part of the products that we license, is an AI technology that automatically thinks of all the tests your system needs, and then it plugs into another system that automatically runs all the tests you need. Because humans trying to think of every possibility of every way of clicking every button in your website or your system is, the humans think of about 6%, which is why we have 94% bugs. So we close that gap out. The next 30% is a business we started 10 years ago now called Concierge Up, and it allows people to hire our geniuses to solve any funded problem, regardless whether it's technical or not. Their mom has throat cancer, their daughter has anorexia, they want their kid to be next Britney Spears, they want their product to become a New York Times bestseller endorsed by Oprah. Whatever they want to have happen, we can make it happen. We
How
have-
much do you guys charge for that?
How much does that cost?
They're all different
Yeah.
prices. It ranges from $150 an hour up. Our minimum project size is 10 grand to get an account open where we start discussing it. And we've solved problems, including getting adopted kids connected with their biological parents for $300 and then giving the rest back. But there's a ton of, we do 150 missions a day. And so I finished that one this morning. Middle of today, we helped a $100 million credit card processing company be scalable, auto-scale within the Amazon cloud and fix their architecture for 3,200 businesses that were worried they couldn't process credit cards for Christmas. Yeah, in any one day, it's crazy how much stuff goes on.
What was the name again?
So 30
Concierge.
Scorpion Computer Services or conciergeup.com. If you go to Concierge Up at the top, it'll scroll different things we do. You know, ex-girlfriend, ex-wife, ex-business partner starts wanting to extort you in court and take money from you or shut down your business or whatever, we make that go away. Choosing winning racehorse based on its DNA, we've won the Breeders' Cup for 4 years now. Absolutely anything. And any one of these, if you said, okay, tell me how you solve that, I can tell you, or just look at any of the videos on our website where we talk through this stuff. Go to the About box.
I had a follow-up question.
So, last piece. 10% of our business is Scorpion Studios. So, The Mummy, Top Gun 2, Spider-Man Homecoming, Spider-Man Venom, the Scorpion TV show. We're the tech advisors. So every time we see them hack something, say something, have a blackboard or whiteboard with something, talk about cryptocurrency, whatever, we give the writers all that stuff. So the writers' room is run by the showrunner, we have the researchers' room run by a researcher, and then they connect. So the writers can stay in flow on the emotion of the story. And when they go, I need a backstory for this person needs to be from the Army Corps of Engineers, and she needs to have killed a kid in the past with some kind of chemical where she screwed up, so she feels guilty about it. We'll get all the right terminology for that and actually call the Army Corps of Engineers we're working with and go, I need you to talk to me for half an hour and get all that back to Hollywood quickly.
Yeah, what's the chemical and where was he? Exactly. All that data has to be.
Yeah, they have all the details off the top of their head.
It's like all the
So
stuff.
saves a writer doing 3 months research.
And the
or
whiteboard in
something.
house, that was all done by doctors. I mean, that was all had to be
Right.
legitimate.
Someone has to write that stuff.
Right, yeah.
Sorry, you say you had another question?
Yeah, you kind of present as like a very militaristic kind of type of presentation. Was that
Thank
from,
you.
Yeah, no, just have a military family. So, in company culture at Scorpion, is that kind of reflected as well?
Probably, because every company is a reflection of the founder. I'm very black and white. I can fake the EQ when I need to.
Right.
But I'm very cut and dried, firm but fair. I just care about the facts. I don't care who's a friend or how long I've known them or any of that stuff, because I can just drill down, look at the code and see who was right, who was wrong, what were the facts, and let's just fix it. That also makes me easy to scale in the business, because everyone under me, as long as they're always making a logical choice, even if they're wrong, I'll never give them a hard time over it.
You obviously spend a lot of time thinking about the future, and you alluded to that a bit when you started kind of riffing about how much money we're going to need going forward. When you look at your crystal ball, what are you pretty confident about in terms of how our world is going to be different 10 years from now? That's a big question, but
I have the answer. I just don't want to be called a demotivational speaker.
Do it,
better to be
yeah.
honest
Do
than
it, you can inspire us.
No, he's not going to be inspiring. He's
No,
going to be
you
a
don't.
downer.
Depends when you
No,
solve
it's
the problems in
inspiring.
life.
Yeah.
Okay. The future will be a two-class system where you tell the robots what to do or they tell you what to do. You know, will AI take over like the Terminator and kill us all and replace us? Well, it evolves exponentially and we don't. So at some point that line crosses, yes.
No truer words have been spoken.
Now, but if we look at some immediate ripple effects rather than far into the future, let's just take Uber. Our cars are parked 97% of the time. It's a massive inefficiency. We have an entire economy built on it. So Uber has had self-driving cars now running practically in Pittsburgh for a couple of years. They're legal in New York and Nevada too. Now they have over 3 million drivers between them and Lyft active. So what if tonight Uber decided, okay, we don't need all those contractors anymore because they're not employees. We're going to release our own fleet of self-driving cars. By the way, they partnered with Volvo, which is owned by the Chinese a few years ago, for that very purpose. These cars, we will centrally wash them, recharge them, and maintain them ourselves like the metro buses downtown. Because they're targeted advertising, they know where you go, what you eat, who you meet with, you're sliding your credit card, they know you guys have lunch together and where you go. And they'll have full broadband Netflix in the back, and you'll be the target captive audience for advertising. So that means the Uber will be free or $2. Now, if a student can get around all year as much as they want for $2 or free, they're not going to spend 18 grand on a Prius. So that kills car dealerships, gas stations, tire centers, brake centers, smog centers, farmers insurance agents, valets, car washes, all not needed. Then you look at commercial real estate. Fly over any major city, half of it's zoned for parking. You never park in Uber, ever. So that becomes cheap prefab houses for all the people who just lost their jobs. So you can live in a condo that's the size of a shoebox for 100 grand, like they do in Japan. That crashes commercial or residential real estate, because now people have an alternative place to live and it brings down rental rates. When Amazon bought Whole Foods, they had the ability, you have the ability to go in, pull something off the shelf and walk out. Proximity scanner eliminates the need for checkout. 3 million, primarily girls, work as checkout counter girls. The military has been working on unmanned vehicles, unmanned aircraft for about 15 years. We have 3 million directly and 3 million indirectly employed in the military. We're never putting 20,000 feet boots on the ground in France ever again in an invasion. We're hitting a button from here and sending the drones over. So that's just jobs for the boys in an economy that's 22 trillion in debt, in cities that have less money to be able to afford it. Because we're printing our own money, the next cyber war, our next war will be a cyber war, and we're 47th in math, and our next generation is primary qualification
What is a cyber
is the
war?
ability to take selfies.
Sorry, yes.
When is
Oh, the button, pushing the button. Got it.
when does the economy crash? The current estimate is in the next 18 months. Federal Reserve curve, the yield curve reversed a couple of months ago. And if you look at that in the past, look at just a historical chart, every time it reversed is when we had a recession, every single time.
In 2008, when the shit hit the fan, depending on who you speak to, whether they were conservatively inclined or liberally inclined, doesn't matter. The range was we were between 7 and 10 days away from your going to your ATM and it not giving you your money.
Well, it can't, because the banks are only required to hold 3% cash for the deposits it has. So the first 3% of people who get there can take some cash out, or at least the $600 you're authorized to take out, and the rest is SOL.
Right, run that math, you know, what is the ripple effect? So a lot of that
So the-
scramble to get money, you know, to the Fed filled up was just really to put the 20s back in the ATMs.
We want
That's not gonna happen next time.
1.6 million truck drivers. Tesla has self-driving trucks.
In 2000, the government issued, commissioned a report from JPL, you might know something about this. What are the most at-risk industries, career paths rather, in the country? And it was 1999, the report was issued in 2000 Congress, JPL and a buddy of mine, people did this. And they listed, you know, and it was more flat earth stuff, you know, what kind of industries were gonna go away to India, what have you. They ranked the most at risk and the safest. Among the top safest career paths in 2000 was truck drivers. God, forget that. Now that's the top employment category in 21 states in the United States, is truck driving. So run that math, when they no longer have a job, what does that do to the, you know, to the economic reality?
So that's just automated vehicles ripple effect.
Right, that's not the
And
entire
that's stuff that
industry.
we've had for 5 years, not future stuff in 50 years. So AI is getting good enough now to do a lot of legal work, DMV work, although we won't need much of a DMV if everyone's Ubering around. Now 5 years later, it'll be illegal for humans to drive in the freeway, unless we're stuck in our own carpool lane, because it will affect the insurance rates on the Ubers that are all
Safety.
driving 5 inches apart because they never run into each other. It eliminates traffic congestion too, so I would have been here on time. So these ripple effects will happen fast. And when 1 in 3 people can't feed their kids anymore, this thin veil of civilization we have around us goes away really fast. Just ask anyone who went through the last set of LA riots. So that's our near future. It's not going to be a 4-year we bounce back like we did in 2007 because one thing went wrong. This will probably be 15 years plus before the newly elected government figure out how universal wage works. Because we elect politicians not because they're right, but because they're popular. China, the mayor of a small town has a degree in economics and environment and chemical engineering degree, and is qualified for what they do and have some intelligence to understand what they do. Our politicians are qualified to be politicians who study political science and hung out with other politicians. They don't know anything.
Someone once said, never underestimate the Americans. They'll figure it out. They have enough money and
I think when they said that, it was because immigrants were coming here.
they just said never underestimate. Never write them off because
Well, that works until it doesn't.
in a
Yeah.
crisis
That works until it doesn't.
Yeah, but based on what?
Based on what?
they have so much money.
No, we don't. We're printing our own.
Yeah.
Someone will eventually call
Okay.
BS on that.
Okay.
No economist in the world could justify our economy.
Okay,
Just-
one quick thing.
just impeach an
If
incompetent
you
president.
agree that
Okay,
these things
okay.
they follow a sine wave, a roller coaster pattern, they go up, they go down, right? What is the upper limit of a sine wave? It's infinity. What's the bottom limit? 0. So we go like this, if it gets to 0, which is what it's talking about, all hell breaks loose. There's no under 0 in that.
There's a book, the guy wrote Guns, Germs, and Steel.
Oh, yeah.
He also wrote The Fall of Empires.
Yes.
We used to have the Mayan Empire that was invincible, and the Greek Empire was invincible, and the British Empire was invincible, the American Empire was invincible. And all the science they had just before they collapsed is in his book, and they all apply to us right now.
How
So
soon
where
should we
would-
expect this to fail?
How soon? The
Wow.
ending quarters of 2020 is the current estimate.
Sorry.
Is this
We should get funded
local
soon.
to US? Because I have a house in India, so.
When the US catches a cold, the rest of the world catches a flu.
Okay.
6 months later.
So you still think this is the best place to be? I mean, you could presumably live anywhere.
The best place for me, I solve problems.
Uh-huh.
For rich people who are panicking.
So a 2-part question. So if you're saying you're expecting some kind of disaster or looming in 18 months, and we're working at a pace right now in Founder Institute that's pretty fast and accelerated, like what should we multiply that by? Because I'm assuming there's going to be a window of opportunity for us, and then that window is going to close for all like the entrepreneurs that are just like struggling to get their little piece of the pie. And additionally, if we're not going to be dependent on the gross domestic product, are we going to be dependent on the genuine progress indicator? And does that really, how would that affect us here? Especially because I come from an environmental space.
Environmental is a nice to have. People who care don't matter, people who matter don't care. We could have solved the environmental crisis in 1960. The technology to solve it was patented in 1960. It cost about $1 billion to solve our energy crisis. I can explain exactly how to do it. Nobody's going to do it till the last drop of oil is sold. And everyone who cares about it won't put their hand in their pocket to come up with $1 billion. So that's a self-fulfilling prophecy of what's going to happen there. In terms of what you guys are doing, if you're being entrepreneurial, learning how to manage people, learning how to critically think, how to solve problems, then you're a useful, capable human being. Whether it's this business, you merge into another business, you partner with someone else, someone buys you out, or you go get a regular job, you're a capable human being, and the confidence that this gives you rounds you out better than any other degree you could get. You know, don't do an MBA, do a startup, or 3. Be better than any MBA you'll do. So this is a great use of your time and a great focus. Whether what you're doing specifically will catch on or not, or be affected by the economy, I'd have to take it thing by thing to work it out. But if it's a luxury good that's a nice to have, it better cost $1 million a pop, because you're just going to have the extremely rich who have a wall up around where they live and everybody else. And there's not a whole lot of middle anymore.
Let's say all the lights and all the computers went off and we all ended up in a big campsite. What do you think would happen? All the buildings fell down and
I think Burning Man would run out of tickets.
I am going to be so rich.
what would happen?
Yeah,
I will be so
Smart
rich
people
if
would
that's
figure
going to
stuff out.
happen.
We're all gonna need something.
People would run their stuff in the Amazon cloud, so they wouldn't have that problem.
No, but let's say the Amazon cloud crashed. And
No.
no
Fine.
electricity.
Okay, they're running on multiple continents.
Okay.
In the history of mankind, multiple continents haven't gone dark.
So, but then you're saying on the one
And they have
hand,
their own power stations.
on the one hand, like everything's going to crash, and then now you're saying no, this
No, I
is
said finances are going to crash. I never said Amazon's going to crash.
so finances are going to crash.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, we're gonna look a lot more like a developing world economy. Very rich and very poor.
India will be outsourcing to us after we get qualified in something.
Have you been to Burning Man?
Yeah.
So given that,
Well, I figured they occupied.
What? I mean,
they
I
occupied
wanna
Wall
know
Street.
real stuff.
They occupied Wall Street, so I thought I'd do the reverse. I did fly in though, and I retasked the military satellites. I had Netflix and internet the whole time.
Oh, wow.
Oh my god! Cheated!
You know, that is great.
That's funny.
Oh, man. What camp are you in?
Camp Freedom or something.
I'll know where to go then.
All right. Well, I hope this was entertaining.
definitely.
And I wish you the best of luck, really, in everything you're doing. And I'm not trying to be Debbie Downer with all this stuff, but Google every stat I said, give or take 5%. This stuff is all happening. This is not my opinion. This is all stats that are out there. I'm just pulling it all together, going, yep, all this will just come at the same time.
So how are you thinking about repositioning your company?
I'm not. We have customers, 44 billionaires, 5 royal families as clients. They got issues. Money isn't one of them. They call us for everything now. We're their psychologist, their doctor, their dad. They're on their speed dial. We're pulling their kid back when he gets kidnapped. So we're embedded, and we're flexible, and we have enough of our own military equipment to protect ourselves. You've seen some of my vehicles. So I actually, weirdly, it's good for me. The enemy of my business is apathy. Everyone's fat and happy and nobody has an issue and there's nothing urgent. You don't need me to fix anything. I'm the fire brigade. Everything's about to catch fire. I'm fine.
I actually have a question. Can you speak to anything around how a person should position themselves when the market that they are going into is particularly emerging? And that not many people know about it. It's kind of slowly growing at maybe not necessarily a snail's pace, but it's in its incubator and about to burst. I'd say roughly within the next 3 to 5 years. Especially considering with where AI is going, and then on top
I mean, it depends on your goal. If your goal is you're wealthy and this is for fun and you want to be a first mover and be a guru in this particular space, then fine, you'll have first mover advantage and help define that industry. If your goal is to make money, educating the public or waiting on them to be educated is a very, very famous way of going broke. Especially in this country. Education's not their thing. So trying to convince everyone one by one, et cetera, is a bad business plan. And people used to talk about first to market, but there's been a ton of books, and the reality is being second to market is smart. And even with browsers, Netscape spent a ton of money figuring it all out, defining the browser, defining how it works, everything else. Bill Gates sat back, let them spend all their money on R&D. And then when it was all good, he made Explorer, released it for free, put him out of business, and then started charging extra for Microsoft Office. And he's done that over and over and over again. Anyone ever hear of Lotus Notes, the first spreadsheet?
Oh, yeah.
Super
Okay.
Calc.
After it was all figured out, then he did Excel.
Super Calc was it? Remember that? Yeah.
Word perfect?
Perfect word. Yeah.
Wait, done in Word. That tells you how useful your patents are.
Word star was the first.
Remember WordStar.
How useful your patents are. Your lawyer will never tell you this, but do you think Microsoft had patents on their systems? Or Apple had patents? Or McAfee or Norton or Symantec? They all had patents, tons of patents. They all copied each other anyway.
Yeah.
None of them could enforce it. Name any piece of software, anywhere, that's protected by a patent, where there isn't 5 other versions of it. So your barcoding thing, hope you didn't spend too much on patent.
No.
Because it's a cute story for older investors who still think that matters. But I'd change your green thing to a brown thing, put it at the beginning of this SKU, and
No, but you're right, because like one of the articles we're writing is called Fossil Fuel Friendly, and I work a lot with Chevron. I have no problem with fossil fuels. So it's about incorporating them into that sustainable paradigm.
yeah, no, I'm just talking about competitors.
No, fine.
If what you have, patents are not keeping up. But it sounds good on the business plan.
Where is Scorpion based out of? Or do you have remote workers?
We're based in Burbank.
Okay, right here.
We're in 22 countries.
Okay.
So. All right.
Okay, thank you very
Thank you,
much.
Walter.
So we're ready to do a couple of more pitches.